Welcome to the February 2021 edition of 4 and 4. I'm Kathy Halgren, Director of South St. Paul Public Library, and the 4 books I'm going to talk about this time have to do with people wanting a better or different life and the choices they make, sometimes with tragic results. My first book is one of my favorites from 2020, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Have you ever wondered, what if I actually married the first man who proposed? Or what would have happened if I took that job offer in a totally different field? What would my life be like today? Well, every so often I ponder such questions, and Nora Seed, who has lived all her life in the same town that she describes as a conveyor belt of despair, is full of regrets for paths not taken, and on top of it, she's just been fired. Instead of seeing the important part she plays in her current life, she just wants something different. And she gets it in the form of the Midnight Library, a place between life and death where she gets to choose volumes that contain all the unique lives she could have lived if she'd made different choices. So with each volume, she's transported into another life path. And I have to say, I was feeling anxious with each situation since she was living on the fly as she's dropped into these lives where she doesn't know anything, but she knows the characters. And I loved seeing her try to work things out and figure out if she truly would have been happier in this alternate life. If she feels disappointed by a life, she ends up back at the Midnight Library and consults her guide, which resembles a librarian from her school days. I generally am not a fan of library books because they are so far from the truth of what it's like to work in a library, but this one I really enjoyed, and I hope you do too. My next book, Before She Was Helen by Carolyn B. Cooney, has a serious theme at its core, but is hysterically funny in its depiction of what life is like at a Sun City community. Clemmy lives in a small condo in an area where people look out for each other, and she has the unenviable task of looking in on Dom, her next-door neighbor who could use a little help in the hygiene and social interaction departments. She hasn't seen him for quite some time, so she goes into his condo and discovers a door to the condo next door to his, which is rarely occupied. Curiosity gets the better of her, and in that condo, she sees a lovely glass sculpture that turns out to be a rig for smoking marijuana oil. And if she just left it where it was, there'd be no story. But she doesn't and sends a photo of it out to her relatives, and then the craziness begins. I loved how the author depicts life at a retirement community, describing the residents and their secrets, their habits, but what we actually discover is that people may be leading double lives, and Clemmy's no exception. She has quite a story to tell. The author may be familiar to you as she wrote the famous The Face on the Milk Carton, and now in her 70s, she's decided that writing for adults is a lot more fun and is switching from children's young adult books to adult fiction. So I expect more fun reads from her in the future. My third novel, A Burning by Megha Majumdar, has gotten rave reviews as one of the best books of 2020, and I agree wholeheartedly. This novel consists of 3 characters whose lives are interwoven in deciding the fate of one of them, young Jeevan, who just wants to escape her poverty in Kolkata, India, by learning English and working in a pantaloon store. But she makes one mistake that changes all that. Terrorists throw torches into a train, killing over 100 people. And she makes a hasty post on Facebook to someone who actually is connected to terrorism activities and becomes a scapegoat for the crime. Enter Lovely, a hijra who is male but dresses as female and identifies as female, and blesses brides at weddings and newborn babies, but her real dream is to become a movie star, and she has talent but needs the break. We learn that Jeevan was actually tutoring her in English, paving the way for Lovely's success, and her story supplies a comic relief for the rest of the novel. And then we have Sir P.T., a Phi-Ed teacher who feels ostracized by the other teachers, but one chance moment with a local politician changes his world and his trajectory towards success at any cost. This novel reminds us of what we will do to better ourselves while choosing to ignore the effects of our actions on others who are just trying to survive powerless. Very timely and absolutely engrossing. I highly recommend it. My last book, When We Were Vikings, by Andrew David MacDonald, is about Zelda trying to navigate the world via Viking practices and tenets, while her brother Gert is letting her down by dealing drugs and skipping out of college. Born with fetal alcohol syndrome, brave Zelda is doing her best to protect those in need, or her tribe, while wanting to experience the world as others do, and becoming legendary in the process. Her literal view of the world can be comical, but also provides a sort of sanity as a foil to the mess her brother has introduced into her life. Of course, things go sideways more than once, but the characters are compassionately depicted as we see strong bonds between people being tested and eventually reaffirmed by love. That's all for this edition of 4 and 4. Continue to stay safe, everyone, and hope to see you again with 4 more titles in 4 minutes.